everybody. This is our February Public Health and Safety meeting. And we have a full agenda, but we will watch the clock because we've got another meeting at 7:30. So why don't we just move our way through, unless, Matt, unless you have any general updates. I thought we could just move through.
Thanks, Rob. I don't have any additional updates to what's already on the agenda, and I'll just save anything that I was going to talk about for those items.
Okay, great. All right, so why don't we discuss first the EAC recommendations, and then after that we have Shade Tree on the agenda. And I see Rick is here from Shade Tree, so he can join us for that part. So in terms of the EAC, we did get a memo from Jesse Lytle recommending ways to spend the $10,000 climate action implementation, budget line that has been already funded through the budget cycle. So that's something we could start with. That was a list of items that he would like, the EAC would like to recommend.
Yeah.
Bob and Mona, did you get that?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at. I have the same thoughts that I had about it when we reviewed the request for the budget. So, not. I guess I'm curious as to what we're going to discuss. Are these specific requests now?
Yeah, unless we need more detail. These are, this is their plan, and they would kind of item by item, they would roll out this year.
Okay. So like my recollection of the conversation we had during budgeting is that we had decided to set aside these funds, but that there was some uncertainty as to whether or not that we would actually elect to spend the funds, so that those requests would be made individually for council approval at the time they would be needed. Is that your memory of it, Rob or Matt?
Well, the issue is, the EAC is kind of in a position where they want to be sure that the money is spent to, that's their interest. They want to be moving ahead with climate implementation. And so here we are in February. I just worry a little bit about the timeline if we get to December and we haven't spent anything.
Well, I guess, I absolutely see how we need to spend $500 for the ICLEI membership and for the $1,200 for the station fee. When I see the number for the public outreach, though, I'm wondering if there might be some consolidation. I know there are other public, like say, facing initiatives on the part that the office is looking at, like in terms of communication with the community. And I'm just wondering if those can be, if there's maybe some wisdom to consolidating some of this messaging with some of the other newsletters that the borough distributes. I know there's an interest on the part of some people who have discussed Sabine Avenue for sort of having some general surveys and information provided to residents about the Sabine Avenue property. So I'm wondering if this allocation of $2,100, if it's wise to do that just for EAC expenditures. And I guess I recollect us sort of putting aside $10,000, but the commitment wasn't to spend it so much as to set it aside so that it'd be available when it was needed. Do you remember that, Mona?
Yeah, we don't have to spend any of it. But
I do. I guess my question, I do. My question is, if we did agree to these, they'd have to go through council anyway, right? Or would they just go to the staff to decide? If they went through us, because we agreed in council that we'd do a fund, they'd still have to go through council, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get clear about as well, Mona. And I thought we'd already allocated this money. I mean, I already thought that this money had been put in the budget, set aside in the budget. So,
It is, yeah, it is in the budget.
so is this, are they making a specific request?
Yeah, they would like to spend the money this way. You know,
So-
they're recommending.
Okay. So Rob, we would approve this and then it would go forward to council to approve?
That's my sense, unless we're unhappy with it or not satisfied, you know, in which case.
I obviously, yes, the ICLEI annual membership, yes, the EV charging station annual fee. I also have hesitation about the postcard distribution. That's a lot of money and, you know, we're using paper to do it. So I think there are other ways that we could kind of launch and popularize this at first. I don't know that we have to do 3 postcard distributions. I love the idea of an energy audit to identify high priority projects. What does ROI stand for?
Return on investment.
Oh, okay, return on investment. And the rebates for tax or tax credits for residents, I'd like to think about that more. I love the idea that maybe $25 rebates or tax credits for switching to renewable electricity. It's a low hanging fruit. It can have much larger, broader impact than just the borough buildings, which don't use that, you know, nearly as much electricity as all the private residences. But I guess I'm hesitant to maybe implement that this year, but I don't know. I mean, I could be persuaded maybe, but I also would say it should be implemented in a way that would reach more households than 15. And maybe electricity, to me, switching electric providers seems more equitable if you focus on that and reach more people than if you're focusing on people who already have the money to buy expensive heat pumps. And I think part of the thing that's important about this is that we do it in a way that's equitable too, to reach people who, you know, anyone, renter or not, could switch their electricity and maybe afford it, right? But most people can't afford heat pumps, and the people that can, I feel like they don't need our help. And I would say that the goal of tax credits or rebates would be really to hone in more on people who otherwise, you know, who otherwise don't have the funds. So I would probably steer it away from the heat pumps for that reason. Those are just my initial thoughts.
Mhm.
So now that I know what we're talking about, Rob, I can offer some thoughts also, which are very much in line with what Mona said. Like, yes to the ICLEI membership, yes to the EV charging, public outreach. I've already expressed my reservations about it. I think it's something I'd want to hear the borough staff weigh in on, given other communications needs. Seed money for borough energy savings, the energy audit stuff. I expressed an opinion about this at the budgeting meeting, and I still have the same concern. I'd like to hear from staff about, you know, and particularly the borough engineer, about the need for that, given the fact that we did do an energy audit some time ago on the Sabine Avenue property, and it seems to me that I'm not certain if I understand the benefits of a comprehensive energy audit on the borough, other borough-owned buildings. I get that there are certain sort of, you know, we had an architectural firm do a facilities inventory, and they made suggestions for capital planning, you know, capital expenses in the future, in the out years. And it seems to me that, like, when we replace windows, we're going to replace them according to like energy efficient standards, or when we replace mechanical equipment, we're going to do that. When new roofs are put on, we're going to, you know, they're going to be insulated according to standards. So I'm not sure what the, you know, what I guess I'd want to hear more from staff or from the borough engineer about, like, what could we expect to learn from auditing the, you know, energy audits at this point in time, given that we've just done a facilities assessment. I don't know, it just doesn't quite make, I get why people do them on their homes, but it doesn't quite make common sense for me that we do them on borough properties at this point in time. But I would like to hear more from the staff, and particularly the borough engineer. As for tax credits and rebates and tax credits, I agree with Mona. I think it has to be equitable. I am completely in favor of their idea of creating an incentive to incentivizing switching to renewable electrical. I think it's like a small investment and it really could stimulate change, you know, and it could stimulate people to elect to choose renewable electricity. I in general like their proposal for establishing an energy fund, but I'm not sure if that's collapsed, you know, if that's part of this. I guess I prefer to entertain these like sort of these requests one at a time in terms of presenting them to council rather than lumping them all together. I think it makes more sense to present them to council one at a time as needed,
Okay,
rather than kind of collapsing them all together. I think we'll end up with an impossible to manage
okay, that's fine. Let's
conversation.
do it that way. So it sounds like we have agreement for ICLEI, and we could recommend that to the full council because the EAC's been waiting for months to, you know, renew that membership. They've been waiting on us to say yes. So
Yeah, and why does it cost $1,200 a year to operate this charging stations?
that was their estimate. I don't know the exact number, but once they're installed, we'll know the number.
I mean, is that just like the cost of the electricity and we'd be giving it away to people who want to charge their cars? Or
Software.
it's the software?
Mhm.
Oh.
To process the payments and all that.
And I guess I want to just sort of echo the thought that Mona had too, is like, maybe we're 1 year away from really seeing, there's so many priorities right now. Maybe we're like a year away from some of these things, but I guess I'd like to know a little more.
Okay, well, that's good. Let's close there because we need to move ahead and we'll recommend the ICLEI membership for now.
Oh, can I make one more teeny suggestion just to bring back since I just thought of it? Instead of heat pumps, like people have the option to switch to 100% renewable gas. And maybe that would be more equitable to give a smaller amount of money for switching to renewable gas, which you can do also with a phone call, just like electric, instead of heat pumps. That's something. Anyway, but yes, I think it's a good idea to, I like where they're going, and I think it's a good idea to look more in depth at each one as we agree to spend on them.
Yeah.
Yes to ICLEI.
Yes to ICLEI. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
I just wanted to chime in from a borough administration standpoint. You know, I'm in favor of all of these ideas, right? And I don't ever want to, you know, be the one to prevent these sorts of things. I'm just going to say, you know, the voice of reason here, limited staffing right now. And so I'm looking at easy things to manage. And those first two, maybe third, depending upon what we're talking about with the postcard, those are easy things to manage, right? The things that won't take significant staff time to do. The remaining two things, I really admire what those projects are. That last one, that's going to take a lot of staff time to figure out and manage. And I like the idea. And maybe we could start hammering out those details in the second half of this year. You know, typically those types of reimbursements, grant program type things, really based on the previous year's data. I'm just thinking, you know, strategically from a staffing standpoint, that would give us enough time to fully vet what it is we're going to offer and then get us to a point where staff would be able to actually support these efforts.
Okay, that sounds good. So thank you, Matt. So let's go ahead with ICLEI. We could recommend that to council for now, and I'll talk more with Jesse about, like you say, Bob, coming at these one at a time.
Yeah, I mean, you could go to council with all three, that's top three for a discussion. It gets murkier with the bottom two.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the public outreach. I think we should be doing more of that. I'm just not sure if we should be doing them single issue one at a time or in groups. So in groups of issues. So that's just more of a question.
Okay. All right. So the other item from EAC was a request to expand from 5 to 7 members. That was another memo from Jesse Lytle. Anyone want to weigh in on that?
Sorry, I saw the memos about the budget. Did I miss that memo about the expansion?
I think it's in that package, but
My mic's on, John.
yeah, basically Jesse is saying that we appointed, let's see. Oh, Lee Davis is an unofficial appointee. I think we had a discussion about this a while ago, but anyway, they have 5 members and then Lee Davis is a 6th member. They would like to be able to expand to 7 members because of all the work that is involved in implementing the climate action plan.
I guess I'm having been involved in boards and commissions for a while. Like, I think there are times when it's important to adjust the membership. For example, we increased the size of the planning commission from 5 to 7 members, and then we adjusted it back down again. I'm just wondering if the EAC, since we just increased it to 5, whether we could just leave it at 5 and they could, use volunteers who sort of in an associate, say like informal associate sort of membership or something. They could have volunteer helpers, perhaps. There's no reason that people can't assist. That happened with the planning commission too. There would be members and the people in the community who were interested in helping out and would do some of the legwork. I guess I'm not really sure I see the benefit at this moment of increasing their numbers.
What are, you know me, I'm someone who loves getting as many volunteers involved as possible if they're willing to volunteer their time. What would be the downsides of them expanding? 7. If they think they can do.
The only downside is just like it's more annual council appointments. But I'm kind of, I agree, like the more the merrier. I don't know if I guess from Matt West's perspective, I wonder if there's any staff issue with having numbers on boards and commissions.
Thanks, Bob. It's, managing boards and commissions members is a challenge. It's a logistical challenge. So you're adding 2 more, it's 2 more to keep track of. One thing that is a recurring theme that we see from borough administration standpoint is oftentimes it becomes difficult to find enough people who want to volunteer for all boards and commissions. So it does put the onus on the office to do that. It's not a huge deal, but there is a cost. And if you're talking about a change to the ordinance, there's also a legal cost because it'll be the solicitor making an update and we'll have to advertise that. So and those are nominal costs, but there is a real cost to that. And there is a cost with staff time.
Matt, I always appreciate your candor and always like to be mindful of the fact that we are understaffed right now. We're working without an assistant manager. So can we say that we would table that consideration until we are fully staffed?
I would second.
Rob, you're muted. Rob's muted.
I would second that moment. If that was a motion, I would second that we table it.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. We'll just come back to it later. Okay, so thank you to Jesse Lytle, the EAC, for sending us these memos. Okay, next.
Always appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of work that they're doing.
Thoughtful and thorough. Yeah.
Okay, so next we move to the shade tree. That's next on our agenda. So maybe we'll take this till 7 o'clock or so. We have only about 10 minutes, Rick, sorry.
That's all right.
But we did have the recommendations that came to us from Shade Tree. We had them reviewed by the solicitor, John Walker, and then he sent a memo. And so that's something that we wanted to kind of digest in the committee now. And the committee members may have some questions for you, Rick. And I also see Carson's here as vice chair.
I have a question, Rob, um, about the solicitor's review. I didn't understand. Basically, the solicitor writes, I do not believe the borough can legally condition a temporary occupancy permit upon whether a tree should be planted within the borough's right of way or elsewhere on the private property based on under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Code and Ordinance Act 133 of 2016. Occupancy permits are only allowed to be withheld or conditioned if there's a violation of properly adopted building, housing, property maintenance, fire or maintenance, health and safety nuisance ordinance. Now, is he referring to the Pennsylvania Municipalities health and safety ordinance or to our borough ordinance? Because it seems to me that I don't understand why we can't legislate the need for a tree as a health measure and safety measure, given that, the trees are evidence to produce traffic calming.
Right.
Streets with they're tree lined have fewer accidents. There's evidence like that, and
Yeah.
we also know that there's environmental benefits, which is a health issue. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
wondering, I wonder if someone can explain that to me.
Well, my understanding, Bob, is that, and we can check back with John, but my understanding is that John didn't see a way for us to link it to the use of occupancy certificate legally, but that we could add an optional line to the use, administratively, we could add a box to the use and occupancy form if people wanted to voluntarily choose to have a tree planted. And the other kind of workaround that John suggested is that we could, through an ordinance, require certain properties, by address, plant trees in the right of way. But we would have to provide that list through a single ordinance of addresses, and that would precede the UNO process.
So we would have to identify each property by address. We couldn't use it, say all of the properties on, say, North Narberth Avenue would be required to have a tree at every 40 feet or something. We couldn't do it that way.
I mean, that's what I've seen in other towns, but we do have the Morris tree study from the Arboretum that does include, I think, all the addresses we would need.
Well, I would move that we adopt something like that. That we would bring that to council for consideration. That we identify specific properties and identify them as tree planting sites on behalf of the public, public good, for the public good.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of you know if John Walco was aware of the Morris study when he did the memo? Because I believe Borough Council did adopt that plan. It's not.
Yeah, I don't know that he had it handy. Yeah.
Okay, I'm wondering if that plan being adopted already does what he's suggesting. I'm not clear.
Well, I think what he's saying, because it does include addresses, right, Rick? The Morris.
I believe, yeah.
So I think what John is suggesting is that we would have to pass an ordinance if we wanted to go this route, with the addresses. Like, I guess by resolution, maybe we accepted the Morris plan, but this would be another step.
But it's a good thought to link that study to the ordinance that we could have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I had 3 plane rides to think about it.
Mona, do you have any questions while we have Shade Tree folks here?
No. I mean, I thought the ideas were good ones, and I guess now it's just a matter of sorting through the solicitor's recommendations. So.
Okay. So maybe what I could do is review this with Matt and Aaron, and I could check back with Rick and Carson and just see. I don't know that we're ready. I don't think we're ready tonight to move it to the council, but we could kind of look through it again and see if we have any questions and I guess clarify which pieces, because there's several pieces. So which pieces exactly do we want to recommend to the full council?
Mhm. I would also like, I'm just seeing this memo for the first time now too, so I'd like to digest it as well. But I think I'd also like to take a little time with that Morris Arboretum plan and just do maybe sort of some random checks on some of the addresses they've recommended and some places where I know there are gaps to see how up to date that plan still is. I think it was adopted 2 or maybe 3 years ago at this point. And I know we've lost a fair number of big trees in the last 2 or 3 years already.
It's 2018, right, Rick?
I'm not certain.
But wasn't the survey done a long time? It was done a long time ago, though, wasn't it? Done in the aughts?
No.
It was updated for
Updated.
this plan.
Oh, okay.
And if I could just wedge in one very quick comment, I think, and this, we might be seeing evidence of this with the communication from the solicitor, but what's really important to us is to start shifting the view of trees as kind of like a nice decorative thing and recognize trees as an essential part of our infrastructure, essential to any healthy community. And I think that's going to take time. I think it's hard. You know, people think, oh, that would be nice if we could put a tree in there. When really it's like, hey, look at your whole street. Look at the ecosystem of your street. Where's the stormwater going? You know, all that kind of stuff. So we're hoping that even though trees are beautiful and make life better, they're also like fundamental to having a healthy community. So we just want to keep sort of shifting that language. I think there's not much, that language is not very common. And I think it can be in our, so I just want to mention that. Thank you.
That's
Get that in.
That's a really good point, Carson. And I think it's safe. They're healthy. They're essential to a healthy communities, but also to safe communities. And I think there's evidence of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt?
I just want to continue to say that, the borough staff supports all of these initiatives. There's nothing that we've heard that we disagree with. I like the idea that we're considering using the use and occupancy mechanism as a touch point. I believe this actually, and Ed, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you and I have had discussions about this, and I believe you were involved in those early discussions as incorporating that into that process. While I see it from a legal standpoint that we can't hold up a use and occupancy permit for not agreeing to plant a tree, we can use that mechanism for us to touch every transfer of property. And that could be our touch point of saying, hey, we're going to do this assessment. That would give us the ability, the borough, the ability to go out and assess it, create this record. Because right now we don't have a good record. We have the Morris Arboretum data, but we haven't been keeping any good records from that snapshot all the way up to present. Nor, it's just, maintaining data becomes a challenge. So I like the idea that we can use that and incorporate that process, because we go out every time a property changes ownership, we actually go out and inspect it, and that could be a part of it. And Carson, to your point, we could use that point when we issue the use and occupancy permit, that we can attach literature from the Shade Tree Commission to promote what the benefits of planting trees are, and use that to our advantage. Well, some might take advantage of it, others might not, but still we're touching all of those properties going forward.
That's really helpful, Matt. Thank you. Rick, what do you think would be workable, like in the Shade Tree Commission? Could you all kind of digest the memo from the solicitor and maybe come back to our committee with your thoughts on how to move forward?
Yeah, we meet this coming Tuesday night. So I think as soon as I'm off with you guys, I'll forward this information to the rest of the commission and put it on our agenda for discussion. We'll do our best to keep it moving.
Okay, great. And even if there's just one piece or two pieces that seem, more doable, we could move ahead on those possibly, while we
Mhm.
think through the others.
That would be great. That would be
Okay, so let's be in touch. Let's be in touch before this committee meets again, which would be the first week of March.
Thank you so much for all your work on this, Carson and Rick.
Well, thank you all for considering it and helping
We
us.
are the Loraxes of Woodside Avenue.
Love it, love it.
I know you want to
Think
move on with your
locally and act
agenda.
locally. Sorry, Rick.
I
go
did
ahead.
just want to say real quickly, we are taking orders right now for our spring planting. So I know we've planted for a number of people I see in the Zoom room. So tell your neighbors, look at your own properties.
Yeah, and when you're taking a walk, I mean, you spot something, text Rick or me. I'm always looking. So every time I walk through Narberth, I look for opportunities for tree planting.
It's a real
Let's
fast
big
quick
team.
question, Rick. What are the requirements to get a tree planted?
Generally, we get these trees through Pennsylvania Horticultural Society through a grant program through Tree Vitalize, and they give us requirements that the trees have to provide some public good. So they have to be planted within 10 feet of a sidewalk, a curb, or a street. That's basically the hardest requirement. We suggest a $50 donation, but we're much more focused on getting trees in the ground, so it's not a required cost. We ask the homeowner or business owner to perform a PA1 call before planting day to make sure we don't hit any utilities.
Great,
Um,
thank you.
There are more details, but that's the long and short of it.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick and Carson. We appreciate
Thank
what you're
you.
doing on Shade Tree.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we'll be in touch. So the next item is the dog barking ordinance that the solicitor sent us a memo on, and this recommends amending the current ordinance language. So let's take 5 minutes or so on that. Any thoughts, Mona or Bob? Are you?
I don't know if Lisa McCann has gotten to see it. I know she's done a lot of work on this, but just to summarize, our solicitor advised us not to use particular timeframes because that would cause excessive use of police resources. And I had a question about that, whether that's really the case, but also that it would allow additional defenses and confusion and enforcement, such as words like continuously or intermittently, and could allow people who are, being fined for that to have additional defenses. So the solicitor went with the reasonable person standard, which is broader. And maybe that would make it easier to get relief. It doesn't include the things that Ms. McCann had originally requested in terms of like specific timeframes. But I guess I do have a question. I'm wondering, would specific timeframes require more resources? There are things in the nuisance ordinance that say, outside of certain hours. So I did have a question of that, but it does seem to make sense to me that it would allow for additional defenses, because in court, someone would say, well, prove that it was, how can you prove that it was this long or something like that? So maybe it would make it easier to get a remedy. But I'm wondering, would it really require more resources? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud about it. I don't know what you guys thought when you read it.
Bob, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but John is saying that this would be an improvement over what we have currently.
So one big thing that was added to our ordinance, one thing that I thought was significant was that it was something that would be a nuisance to the reasonable person. I'm trying to pull up the language. I just had it open. Now I have to reopen it again. So where'd it go? Here.
I guess I'm very interested in what the resident who brought this concern to us would think about this method of about this language, because I think it may just I think it may not change things much if there's not a kind of a way of identifying more specifically like some metrics. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't include those. And I heard what you said, Mona. I'm just not sure that I guess I don't necessarily agree. I know some municipalities do put, bracket the times. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay with coming up with some specific timeframes. I just. But-
Lisa, do you want to?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I can comment, but did the solicitor see the additional samples that I had sent to you folks of the many ordinances around Montgomery County? Not just the proposed one for Narberth.
I believe so, but I'd have to double check with him that he got that.
I'm almost positive that he's aware of those, and that he may have even seen, likely that he saw that memo, but he's a solicitor in other municipalities himself, and he knows these laws and how they vary from place to place.
So let's see, what would be a next step for our committee? We have a proposal from John that does not include the specific time limits that Lisa had, suggested. And so what do you think is the next step?
I think I'd like to, I think a good next step would be to chat about this with council as at large, and see what other questions arise, and then have another. I mean, if there are none, then fine. But let's see what other questions arise and take those to the solicitor and make sure that we sort of haven't missed something.
I think that's a good idea. I'm also wondering, perhaps we can get data from the police about how many times there have been, say in the past 10 years or something, how many complaints, or past 5 years or however much, how many complaints have there been, how many have been resolved, how many have gone to court or resolved otherwise? Because I guess I'm just wondering, I know Lisa said that you have complained a lot, but the answer that you feel like you're getting is that it's not enforceable, or it's not, something under this. So, I mean, I think it's important to have something that's enforceable. So I guess if we could gather some data as well from the police on, past 5 years, how many complaints, how were they resolved? Has it ever gone to court? And do we know what the resolutions were when it went to court?
Yeah, that's good, Mona. I mean, just to note, John Walcom mentions that even the current code he views as enforceable because of his review of the case law.
So that he's seen, I know he mentioned a case, so he's seen examples of this type of code has been enforced in courts.
Right, like without a specific time frame.
So yeah, I think those would be the two steps I'd suggest: data and going to council also.
Okay.
And following up to see what does our solicitor think of, ones that do have specific timeframes, like just to get more on that, because I didn't.
Yeah, I think those are quite a few questions.
I mean,
we have a few questions for John.
And maybe the answer is what he summarized in there, that specific timeframes tend to create more defenses in court and more confusion and more costs of enforcement.
Okay.
Might I suggest that this be brought up at the business meeting? The solicitor is present. That might be the most efficient
Yes.
use of everyone's time. Just so nothing gets lost in translation. If we talk about it tonight, someone writing it down and then forwarding it to the solicitor, and then we just might miss a detail.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying that is that the solicitor does not attend the workshop meetings. And I think all of this type of discussion is valuable, and I'd like him to hear it and be able to respond directly to it. So that would be my recommendation, to bring this up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Matt. Rob, I was having a similar thought. But we're all hearing the same response. If we're all hearing the same conversation at the same time, we'll save dozens of further conversations.
Right. Okay, let's do that. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Let's see, Lisa, while you're here, do you have any comment? I mean, you haven't, I guess, we should send this maybe to you, because you haven't seen it. We just got it recently.
I guess 2 comments, maybe I'll think of a third. I think defensible is the recording like I did. I have a number of them on my phone at this point, you know, from the past couple of months. So I think that is answer that question from the solicitor. If the decision is to go with reasonable person, I don't know if it's up to me to withdraw the proposal, but that's no different than what we have. And I just think it would be a waste of everybody's time to review it and pass it, because it becomes who's a reasonable person.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Like nuisance, just like disturbing the peace. These terms have to be defined.
Actually, if I may, as a retired lawyer, reasonable person is a standard that's used routinely in courts in Pennsylvania. It's a legally recognized standard.
Okay, so
I just think the issue there, Rob, is that, like, while it may be a term of art that's used in the court system, it's not necessarily something you can say to your neighbor. Like, you know, I'm a reasonable person and I don't, you know, and you're disturbing the peace. Like, it's much easier to say, like, your dog barked for like a half hour yesterday from like 1 to 1:30. And like, that's really, you know, that's not really allowed. That's not allowed in the borough. And you know, you're talking about something very grounded and specific. And I just agree with Lisa's last comment about that. It's got to be worth the effort.
okay, so I will take these comments back to John Walco, and then we can bring this to the business meeting, you know, to discuss. Okay, thank you, Lisa, for keeping this on our radar, and we will keep working on it. Okay. So next,
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Lisa, what's your address again? I'm putting that in the public comments. I'm sorry. What's your street address? Don't I put that in the public comments section?
214 Hampton, Muna.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
all right, so we don't have a lot of time. I mean, I think the remaining items, you know, we talked about some of these last time, Matt, so we're just kind of keeping it here so we have a reference point. But
Yeah, Rob, I can just kick off the last 3, the next 3 really quickly here. I just wanted them on the agenda as touch points again. The emergency access road issue at Price Crossing, we are still working on working with Republic to look at the turning radii. Thanks to Barbara Fortner, who had tipped me off to a specific letter from the design engineer to the former manager. I still have yet to find that yet in my spare time, but I know that Ed has been working and meeting with Republic up there and trying to come up with a solution. I don't have a full solution yet for trash. That's the last issue that we need to solve, but we are continuing to work on it. The next thing, the road sign review process. I just wanted to update the committee that I have begun I have begun the process by speaking to the new borough traffic engineer. And he and I had a good discussion on developing a process. And so he and I are going to be working on that. And I expect that roads to be being presented to both public health and safety and infrastructure. We have a standing meeting with him. He's going to begin attending each of the infrastructure meetings beginning in March. Is just a good practice. I just wanted to say that that process is underway. And then the last thing, the draft recycling guide for the website is live. It was live, I think, the day or two after we talked about it last month. And so that is live and active. That's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it. That's a lot of work, all those, a lot of work behind the scenes to address those 3 points. So I do want to remind everyone that the recycling guide is up on the website. So I have it printed out on my fridge, and there are all sorts of things that we can recycle that I thought we couldn't, and vice versa. So check it out. It's also in the weekly flash. And our thanks to Civic for putting that together. So, okay, the last item here is the MOU. I wanted to ask our chief if there's any update on the MOU so that you can keep us apprised.
Sure. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate the time. I won't be long. I sent the MOU, the last draft that everybody has in their receipt right now in their email, was sent over to Superintendent Mike McGrath on December the 3rd and also on January the 6th. So I requested a meeting with Mike on both occasions, I believe. I hadn't heard back from him. So yesterday I sent another request to him for a meeting, and I did hear back from him this morning. So he and I will be meeting next week during February the 8th, the week of February the 8th, and I'll be able to update everybody there. I think the only thing that we're going to have to add that's going to be a flashpoint for us is the agreed upon hours for the annual premium that is paid in quarterly installments to Lower Merion Township for professional services for that MOU. Other than that, I haven't received any pushback from Superintendent McGrath regarding the latest versions that I've given. I certainly welcome him to red mark and do markup on them. But however, I think we're pretty much in the final draft stages of that MOU. It's just going to require again, the update for the agreed upon hours and then signatures subsequently thereafter. As long as everybody reviews it, once that last piece is added, we won't sign before everybody on the committee and council reviews it moving forward, and then it'll get signed thereafter. Other than that, that's it. I'm certainly encouraged by hearing back from Mike, and I'm looking forward to meeting with him next week. And I think so far it looks like it's going to be pretty uneventful, other than that one ad. And that's about all I have, Rob.
Okay, thank you, John. I appreciate that. That's been a lot of work to get that together. And it sounds like maybe in March or April, sometime this spring, we would review that as a council.
Yes, I think it'll be clearly ready by that time.
Okay, great. All right, so I think we're at our public comment time here, 7:20, because we have our next meeting at 7:30. So let's see if there are any members of the public. Let's see, Carol Marie.
Yes, I have a comment, and actually it's to Matt. Hello, Matt. That was good to hear that the street review is progressing. I was concerned that it had gotten stalled. And how do we get on the list to be reviewed?
I'll let you know once the process has been formalized.
Excellent. I will be looking forward to that. Thank you.
I just appreciate your patience. And I do believe that it is a really good idea. As you know, I am a process-oriented person. You know, I like to know what that process is, and it would just help me manage things. It would help the office manage things, and it would help, as I've said in previous meetings, it would help the public manage expectations as well.
Exactly, but you know how dangerous this situation is over on our street. So it's, I'm not willing to sacrifice my kid or any of the other kids that use the park and use our street just because we're having trouble with traffic direction.
Mona, go ahead.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
So Carol Marie, I appreciate how you attend so many meetings and I appreciate your civic participation. You often come up with good ideas. I think it's really important for the public that they understand the situation on Sabine Avenue. Your street, your block has 8 directional signs on it. I went and counted 4 at one end, 2 do not enter signs, 2 one-way signs, 2 at the other end. And then in the middle where you're saying there are issues, coming out of that parking lot, there are 2 do not turn left signs on either side as you're coming out of the parking lot.
What my issue is, I understand what you're saying. By the time you get to the Montgomery Avenue, you've already gone the length of the street. The problem lies when it's not people turning out of the parking lot, it's people that miss signs on Essex Avenue. The people that miss the signs on Essex Avenue, by the time we flag them down, by the time they're running by the park, they all say, I had no idea. So what we want is signs in the middle of the street.
But
signs in the middle of the street.
At the end of Essex Avenue, there are 2 big do not enter signs on either side, plus 2 one-way arrows at the very start of the street. So
that's correct.
So
if someone misses that, they're proceeding down an entire long block. And by the time they've hit the crest of the hill where the playground is, they're going at a pretty good clip. So there's a problem because it's a continual problem. It's not an occasional problem.
I see what you're saying. If people are ignoring those signs at the bottom of the block or somehow missing them, they're hard to miss.
They're missing them. That's the problem. They're missing them.
I see what you're saying, and there should be a need for that's why we have a process for an engineering review, because there are other streets in Narberth, like mine, for example, that people sometimes go down the wrong way. We're right next to the park. We're right near the library. There are a lot of little kids. So I just want to, I guess I'm responding to some of your previous comments in meetings too, acting like we have never done anything about this after repeated concerns and that we're endangering the life of children in Narberth. I find that a little disingenuous when your street has so many signs on it. And I think that's why, and in the past you've complained in public meetings about we're dragging our feet in this process. And that's why we're creating this process. I think this process is important so that we review streets, not just by one person repeatedly coming to meetings and complaining and making it sound like there's nothing, nothing been done on the street. So I think it's
I appreciate your comment, but this is something that's been going, long ongoing. And I used to live on Conway Avenue, so I know people would go the wrong way down the street. But our problem is that people miss the sign, frequently miss that sign.
Yeah.
And whether people miss signs, they miss the sign. And because of all the different types of activities on our street, meaning a daycare center and a playground and a long street with a crest in it, we need to have a solution before someone is hurt, before someone is killed on our street.
Thank you, Carol Marie. We hear you, and like Mona's saying, this is why we want to do this process. We are receiving other requests from other residents. So Michael Pelberg sent this committee a letter complaining of traffic problems on
if you want a petition from
Avenue.
our street, if you want signatures on our street, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
If you want us to get a petition of all the neighbors on the street that want to sign a petition saying there's a problem on our street, we will be glad to do that. But I do take offense at being called the only one who's complaining or the squeaky wheel.
Okay, thank you, Carol Marie. So we will work on this process, because we have neighbors all over the borough who are seeing traffic problems. We need a process to deal with this. So is there anyone else here for public comment? I see Ira.
Nothing.
Okay. I do want to just make note of two other comments, two letters that came to this committee. One is from the CAN group, the Climate Action NARBs, and this was sent from Amy Tukoski Feldman with recommendations on how to achieve net zero emissions in the 201 Sabine site, should that site be reimagined. And there's also a letter from Adam Kazin to this committee about the possibility of a vaccination site. He was wondering if Narberth could partner with the county in any way to set up a vaccination site. So these are other public comments that I just want to be recorded. And as a committee, we will look through these letters, and if we can move forward on any of these, we will. So we'll be working on that in the next couple of weeks. Are there any other public comments? Elisa?
This just occurred to me as you were talking about letters. I think you got at least one email in support
yes.
of the dog ordinance.
Yes, that's right. I just saw that tonight. Yes. I have to get the right screen, but yeah, there is another letter in support of strengthening the dog barking ordinance. And I don't have the address in front of me, but yeah, but we will have that included as well. Okay, so I think we're at the end because we have to move over to our other meeting. So thank you all, and I'll see you in a couple minutes.